I ran up a check, I might do it again. Enemies close, had me thinking they're friends. 10 toes down, I'll be free until the end. Crib outside the city, I don't feel safe in my hands. Took so many years, I'm just waiting for the wins. I'm in debt to no one but the one who took my sins. I do it for real, there's no reason to pretend. If I do it once, I do it again. Add it up, bankroll, euro, peso, add it up, I'm just doing me, everything is on me, oh you matter what. Add it up, bankroll, euro, peso, add it up, I'm just doing me, everything is on me, oh you matter what. Add it up, told her if it's all me, everything is on me, gon' back it up. Matter what, told ya I'ma do me, why you hating on me, it's not adding up. I do roll like a Mack truck, country heart, I might cop a farm and go act up. Lot of scars, I was cold-hearted, now I'm back up. Keep it real, I do this once a month, I don't rap much. I just take the money and go stack up.
Good evening, everyone. How are you doing today? This is Incarceration to Incorporate, all things relevant media. I like to say good evening to Miss Barbara and Miss Suzanne. We're going to have an incredible show tonight. And first of all, I would like to give props to Mr. Julius Hall for letting us allow us to come to a platform to say that we are returning citizens and we are changing the narrative. Also to AB, who was the brain of this operation, Incarceration to Incorporate. I just want to say good evening to you beautiful ladies. Tonight is going to be the topic may be a little sensitive, so I want to forewarn some people. It's domestic violence prison pipeline. And so we're going to be talking to Ms. Barbara. We're going to be talking to Suzanne, and we're just going to chew and chat ladies tonight, since it's a ladies' night.
Sounds
so,
good.
Ms. Barbara, what I would like for you to do is introduce yourself and tell me your affiliation to Incarceration to Incorporate.
Okay, good evening, everybody. First, I want to say thank you to Marie for inviting me, and of course, ATR Media, Mr. Hall, for having me on also. My name is Barbara Arpston. My relationship with the incarceration piece is I work with folks that have been incarcerated, and then also through personal experience, I've had friends that were incarcerated, but also very closely related was my son's father, and went through several years of that, which I'll lead into more here a little bit later.
Okay, Suzanne, can you please introduce yourself and tell me your affiliation to Incarceration?
Good evening, everyone. My name is Suzanne Bunton. There's a title before that called Reverend. Sometimes I leave it out, sometimes I throw it in there, but it just goes to show how far you can come from your past. I did 18 months in the federal penitentiary for basically what our topic is about. I was involved in domestic violence, and really there are no help for unless the law states unless there's a gun pointed to your head, that is about the only way that you can get out of your charges. So I used to say that prison was the best experience of my life, but really it was more of a spiritual boot camp. And so I choose to see it that way. That's exactly what it was. Although I had started to change my life before then, prison became the very element that I needed to remove myself from society to work on me with no distractions. So
first of all, I have to say one more thing. Okay. My co-host, he is not here tonight, Mr. Julius Campbell. As he was saying, we may have started off wrong, but we will finish strong. He is on a retreat with the church, and so I know that you all will probably miss him tonight. So I just want to know he is absent tonight. But anyway, Miss Barbara is here and Miss Suzanne is here, and so Miss Barbara, I want to know. We're talking about domestic violence, and I want to know, why is it so prevalent and it's so sensitive? A woman or is going through domestic violence.
Can you say that again? You kind of cut out, Marie. I missed part of it.
Can you hear me, Miss Barbara?
I can now.
Like,
You're,
like, you know, I say, Miss Barb,
Maybe why is it so prevalent in today's society? What has
Suzanne, you
changed?
can hear me?
Yes, it did cut out on my end as well. I couldn't really hear your question,
yeah,
but I think because Barbara, you've got to see it
yeah.
every
So
day.
let's talk about, let's start with it in general. Okay. So when we talk about domestic violence, that's a large umbrella because that can also include with family members, right? Okay. It might be a brother and a sister. It might be a mom and a son.
Mhm.
What I am work more with and am more in tune with in my own experience is the intimate partner violence. Okay, that's you and a significant other.
Right.
All right. So with that being said, why is it so prevalent? My theory is, well, first of all, we'll say, let's remember what intimate partner violence, domestic violence is all about. It's about power and control. And that is the main premise of it. Okay. It's when a person tries to take total control or does take control of another person. All right. Why is it so prevalent? For one thing, let's look at, I feel like, especially in today's society, there's a real lack of coping skills. Okay. So, when somebody is feeling threatened, when somebody is feeling a lack of self-confidence, when somebody is feeling, some of those other things where actually it's an inward thing with themselves, in order to step up, they're trying to take that control, which, psychologically we can go into that way back, but I'm not going to go there. Okay. So that's part of it, right? The other part is, let's talk about when you hear very often, well, why didn't she just leave? There's so many reasons why a victim is not going to leave that situation. There can be threats in your life. There can be threats on your family. You may not have the financial means to go anywhere else. If there's children involved, that's going to compound the situation as far as making it harder to get out of there. The highest fatality rate with domestic violence, intimate partner violence, is when a person is getting ready to leave. Now, I want to first clarify when I say a woman. You may hear me talking about women a lot through this. I am not saying that men are not victims also, and I've worked with men as victims. It's just that normally the rate for women is higher, and I truly believe a lot of that has to do with it's harder for men to report just because of the way we raise our men, okay? But so going back to that, so the woman, there's so many different reasons why she may not leave. And actually, they used to say the average time for a woman to go back to her abuser is 7 times before she'll get out of there totally. Okay. We also look at, if this is a situation where somebody's in a rural area, there may not be resources, and like I was saying, the most lethal time for a woman to get out of that situation is when the abuser has now realized that, okay, she's serious. I've lost control. And that's when you'll hear about those situations, the murder-suicide ones, or where he's saying, if I can't have you, nobody's going to have you. Those type of situations. Okay. Like I said, sometimes it's a lack of resources. Sometimes the victim doesn't even realize the resources are out there to help them, or they try to just do it on their own because for whatever reason, which when you're in that lethal situation, that's the worst thing you can be doing. And that's where advocates come in and are so important, because they can help you make a safety plan to get out safely. And, there's just so many steps to it. So, as far as prevalence, it's always been here. I think it's just a matter of it's been redefined.
Right.
And it's been acknowledged more. and advocates are really out there working. Activists are out there working now. My passion with it is I'm a survivor. So when I was healed enough in my part of my journey of healing, and I felt like I could step out there and help somebody else, absolutely. That's what I started doing, and that's what I will continue to do. And thankfully, God gave me the gift to be able to help somebody in that manner.
Exactly.
So, of course, and when I see our youth, when I see, these unhealthy relationships that our youth are getting into, it scares me to death. And that's one of the things. I've started my own business. It's called, Transformations Consulting and Support, LLC. Next Wednesday, there's a pep rally in Savannah on Pennsylvania Avenue for the kids that have gotten out of school. I'll have a table there if anybody's interested. Or you can contact me. I'll have information as far as healthy relationships. And I'm going to be doing a series of training for that. If you want to get your kids involved in that. You can find my information. I don't have a website right now, but I do have a Facebook page, and you can follow stuff on there. Also on June 23rd, Marie and I are going to be doing a Zoom, and we're going to be talking about our stories, and we're going to go into that a little bit more, into our stories and how we got out and where we're at with it. And, I'll be educating on those red flags to watch for, and what does this, unhealthy relationship really look like and encompass. And that's so important, because a lot of times when I've worked with victims, I'll hear, well, he didn't hit me. It's not a big deal.
Mm-hmm.
No, that's wrong. Because you know what? That verbal, emotional, psychological abuse leaves bigger scars than that outward appearance scar most of the time. So, sometimes when I'm working with them, and I'll say, okay, let's look at this and let's identify how healthy your relationship really is. I've had women just sit down and start crying and saying, I had no idea. I didn't even realize how unhealthy this is. So then let's look at that. Okay, if you've got kids, what are you putting across to your kids? And, the detrimental effects on the kids when they're involved in situations where intimate partner violence, domestic violence is just mind-blowing, what it can do to the kids. And Suzanne, you had children around at that time, if I remember right, so you can maybe talk a little bit on that.
Yeah.
When I was with my abuser, my son hadn't been born yet. Now, throughout the years afterwards, because I was not physically with him after about a year, but for almost 21 years, this man harassed, stalked me, you name it.
Wow.
So he was very much a part of our lives then. And, my son could attest to some of that we went through.
Right.
But, if that's something you want to touch on, Suzanne?
Sure. It's very, they don't, it's just like Satan. Satan doesn't show up with a horn and pitchforks. And the typical domestic abuser is not going to show you right away who they are. They come in sneaky. They usually will build you up and learn your weaknesses to break you down gradually and slowly. And it intensifies over periods of time. So with my kids, originally, they thought Dad was the greatest, but now that they've gotten older, we'll have conversations, and they'll remember that they had questions about this and they had questions about that. Of course, too, they were able to see the end result heighten to him being just abusive in every way, shape, or form, because he was under the influence of drugs. And after that, he wasn't so good at hiding it anymore. But it is a slow process that kills. And the question you brought up about why can't you just leave? Why can't you just tell somebody is one that I was posed with often. And I had no control over my money. I was forced to do all the work. And then they get into your weaknesses, to your self-esteem, and they make you feel like you're not going to find anyone to love your kids more than their own dad. You're not going to find anyone better. How are you going to support yourself? And then it even gotten to the point where he was doing criminal activity, and I would drive him places and I wouldn't know how deep it was until way later, and he presents it with me, and next thing you know, I am thrown into the case right there with him when I had just learned about it 3/4 of the way in. So and I can say, after the meeting women that I have while behind serving my sentence, at least 90% of the women in there. Now, this is my own statistic. I don't claim to get this from anywhere, but at least that amount was there and incarcerated because of being involved with a man who tricked them in some sort of kind of way to do the illegal activities that they did to land themselves behind bars. And getting away
like that. Oh, go ahead.
Getting away is not as easy as it seems. You actually you fear the alternative. A lot of people are messed up ahead of time before meeting it. With childhood, sometimes people can have dominating, controlling parents. So becoming with a person who is dominating and controlling seems normal. But also there becomes a fear that, well, if I'm not with him, I'd have to go back there. And which one is worse? So you start to weigh out the pros and cons of which evil is the lesser of the two. And you don't see the ray of hope. So I did have to go to a victim witness program to eventually get a restraining protective order away from him. But he was giving my name and my pictures out to mafia people involved in gangs so that he could get drugs on that premise, knowing that they know who his family is. And if he didn't pay, his family would pay the ultimate price. So it can get deep. And this is a person who led me to Jesus. So it's like it's the craziest story ever, but it happens. They can be successful. They can be lawyers themselves. They can be doctors. You just don't know. And a lot of women, they ignore those red flags. They'll feel it in their gut, or they'll see the red flags and they'll cast it off as their own insanity or their own just crazy thinking. So I would love to encourage anyone that has ever had some kind of thought or just bad feeling altogether, even if you don't have proof, to follow that instinct and to get out of there before it's too late.
I think you made a good point too. I was going to say, Suzanne.
Yes.
What? Yeah.
You can hear me, Ms.
I was going to say, yes.
Okay. Go ahead. You can go ahead, Ms. Barbara. I'm sorry.
Okay. When Suzanne brought up the addiction part, it just made me think too about how, involved in it during the victimization, but also let's look at, a lot of times that's what we use as coping skills on our journey of trying to heal, even if we got away.
Yeah.
Because PTSD is very real.
It is.
And PTSD can go on for a very long time. Right. And if you don't learn how to identify those triggers, it can be, it can make life very challenging. So what do some of us turn to? We turn to the alcohol, we turn to the weed, we turn to whatever. Right. Okay. So once you get caught up in that addiction role, okay, once again, here's your pipeline to incarceration. Right.
Right.
Where directly he's not involved, but indirectly
very much
in that situation, because once again, leading back to that domestic violence.
I agree. I've often said that a lack of coping skills is the reason for a lot of what we experience today. They don't teach that in high school or the public education. It's been a heart's goal of mine to somehow, some way, with only the help of God and thanks to meeting awesome people like y'all, to get that sort of teaching brought into our schools today, because we don't know how to cope unless parents are teaching this at home, and most are so wrapped up in their daily life just to provide for their kids that they don't have the luxury of taking the time to show everything that and kids are scared to go to their parents. You know, they're scared of either getting in trouble or being judged, but they also need to know those things taught from an outside perspective, so that they know, you know, there's better ways to handle this other than using drugs or any other form of crutch that people use to cope.
Absolutely.
But that's what I was telling. Can y'all hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, that's what I was me and Ms. Barbara was talking about, Suzanne. When the kids are abused, being abused don't have to be that the parent that is the abuser are abusing, but once they see their mother get abused, they're being abused also, because they see that lifestyle. So me and Ms. Barbara was talking, I was saying that when the kids see what they see, they become the abuser when they get to be an adult.
Right.
Because I remember when my cousin was by her husband and he was beating her, he would say, "You're just like my mom. She got beat and she didn't leave, and you here and I beat you, and you stay here with me." So it's harsh and it's hard. So like, how do you get help for the kids that have been abused and then grow up to become the abuser?
Right.
That's a process, and that's really a therapy thing. You know, it really is, because basically it's teaching learned behavior.
Right.
I mean, basically, and because when somebody grows up in that situation, that's normal.
Right.
I hate the word normal,
Right.
but
that's the lie they believe.
Yep. That's that's what their life is. That's what it consists of. So why would you treat somebody else differently?
Right.
I mean,
they've never seen they've never seen the real normal. So
right.
Yep.
I think
the
the
healthy
real
relationship.
normal. Yeah, but Ms. Barbara, I feel that the real normal to them wouldn't be normal, because their normal, what they see is pain.
Right.
Yeah, they don't understand, and that's why I feel it's so important to teach our kids and these kids out here what these healthy relationships look like.
I agree.
Because some of them don't know.
Exactly.
They just don't know, and how can they be something different when they don't know?
Right.
And the sooner we can instill that, the better. I mean, look at the gun violence in Savannah. It's off the chain, and it's just heartbreaking.
Right.
So, there's a whole lot going on with that whole situation. I'm not going to go there, and I'm certainly no expert on that. But, once again, let's look back at healthy relationships and coping skills. Same thing. Yeah.
You say healthy relationship and coping skills, Barbara?
Mm-hmm.
She can't hear. Can you hear me, Ms. Barbara?
Yeah.
Okay. I was just saying, you say healthy relationship is coping skills, Ms. Barbara?
Yes.
The two combined. She's saying kids need to see healthy relationships, and they need to learn coping skills. Those are the two elements that are missing from kids' lives today. That's what I gathered from what she was trying to say.
Yeah, in a lot of homes, in a lot of in society, basically. And there's a whole lot of different reasons for that, and that's a whole different show, probably.
I agree.
Yeah,
because that's huge. And I can't leave God out of anything that I talk about, but there are certain generational curses that are passed on. And many people will do things, and they've had that question their whole life. Why do I do this? And it could be something simple, but they've questioned it their whole life, and they have no clue. And all along, usually if they found their way into the Word of God and find a relationship with Him, they end up finding out, that's a generational thing. That's been something passed down. And crazily enough, they'll find out, well, I wasn't even raised around that person. I've had that experience personally with my life of just doing something that was just odd that I hadn't seen anybody else do. And then so I get reunited with my biological dad and I see him do it. So I was like, well, okay.
Wow.
Yeah. So I
Genetics.
do believe that. Yeah.
Well,
So, Miss Barbara, because you are a counselor, right, Miss Barbara?
I am not a licensed counselor. No, I am not.
You are
No.
not a licensed counselor, okay? But you,
No, I
but
am
you
not.
take.
I am an advocate. I am a consultant. I educate in areas that I have expertise in. But no, I am not a licensed counselor.
You just she said that domestic violence is real. Domestic violence product is very real. Matter of fact, Ellis, he said, I would never hit a woman intentionally. I saw my mom get abused when I was young, and I made myself a promise to never hit a woman. Very good, Ellis. Well, I myself was in an abusive relationship, and I was with a man for like 10 years. And the funny thing about it's not funny, so don't think it's a joke. But I'm saying the thing about it is I never thought that he would hit me, but he did. You know, and did I leave? No, I didn't. And I didn't tell anyone either. And I didn't tell anyone because I felt that I had loved him. And I know if I would have told my brother, it would have went another way. So I wanted to stay with him, and being that I stayed with him, I took the abuse from him, and it wasn't always physical; it was mental.
Yeah.
And to me, mental abuse is worse than the physical.
Yes.
I'm just saying that's just my opinion. To me, the mental abuse was worse than physical because he made me feel like nobody would want me. He made me feel like I wasn't good enough. So I feel that that's a thing too. When men, not all men, but when men will play on a woman's emotion or mental state to make her feel less than. So yeah, I felt that way.
I agree. I used to beg my ex to beat me instead of doing what he does. He did beat me like a man one time, but that one time was all it took. Whatever doubt I had towards doing whatever he told me to do went away after he beat me like a man. And I never saw this person as a violent person. He was always all mouth, you know. So for him to have done that was really, it caused me to learn to expect the unexpected and to know that I'd never know what I was going to get from him. So I did whatever he said after that.
Wow.
One of the things that's very hard too about the domestic violence is when I work with victims, and I saw it myself too, you know, when we say it's hard to leave because I still love him, and gets very confusing. How can you love somebody that is doing this to you? The thing is you really have to put it in perspective and say, you know what? This isn't the man I fell in love with. The abuser is not the man I fell in love with. The man I fell in love with was very kind to me, was very gentle, was very caring, promised me a good life. Okay? Just like you said in the beginning, Suzanne, that to begin with, you don't see those red flags normally.
Right.
Okay? So, yeah, it gets very confusing when all of a sudden it's like, well, I know I should leave because I shouldn't be treated like this, but I love him, but how can I love him? This is crazy. You know? So that's a lot to work through. It really is.
Yeah, I agree.
So how do you feel, Miss Barbara, about, remember the woman you just posted on Facebook? So I'm asking, how do you feel about her going to jail incident, staying in a domestic violent relationship, and then you end up killing the person who has committed the crime against you by beating you, mistreating you, and then you can't take it any longer, and then you kill that person? I mean, I know it's a cause and effect to everything. So how do you feel about that, Ms. Barbara?
Well, you know, when I shared that article, I think I put this is possibly a case like we had talked about.
Right.
And I
Yes,
said that
ma'am.
because there wasn't enough facts in there. I mean,
Mhm.
from what was written there was, you know, she could have been the aggressor. We
Mhm.
don't know. There wasn't enough information. But does
Right.
that happen? Absolutely. Absolutely. There are a lot of times where women are ending up getting incarcerated because they were protecting themselves, bottom line,
Right.
Right.
you know,
And that,
and that breaks my heart, you know.
Yeah.
And one of the things that, you know, I'm not sure what Savannah law enforcement has gone through as far as training or anything like that, but I know, you know, in the past that some of the law enforcement that I had worked with directly, you know, they admitted that they hadn't gone through enough training, you
wow.
know, for them to be really able to identify. And then they have to stay within their parameters too of that arrest, you know,
Right.
so it can get very complicated. And sometimes when they can't figure it out, they arrest them both,
Right.
you know. So um, that's a really, really tough spot there too. I've got
And a
some
lot.
stats here. I've got some stats
Go
here
ahead.
I think you'll be interested in. And this really, really kind of, it shocked me. And then it also really disturbed me when I was trying to find some of this information. And a couple of the studies even said, due to the fact that the studies usually are not done looking at the victim, the woman victim, it's usually on the men being the perpetrators and how that whole thing goes, that these studies, a lot of them are really old. There was a lot of stuff from 1992.
Wow.
And I do a lot of research. I'm finishing a second master's degree right now, so I'm doing a lot of research all the time. And one of the things is I like to have current research. So this was like 1992, but
Wow.
yeah, that's the way it is. But here's some. This is from the American Civil Liberties Union. 79% of women in federal and state prisons reported physical abuse, and over 60% reported past sexual abuse.
Yes.
Women in prison are 3 to 4 times more likely than male prisoners to have experienced abuse, whether as a child or an adult. As many as 90% of the women in prison today for killing men had previously been battered by those men. And that's the stat that you gave too, off of your own experience,
Yeah.
right, Suzanne?
Yeah.
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 And then now this, I will say this is from 1992, so I don't know how much this has changed, but I would guess it's probably still pretty much on the same spectrum. The years may be a little different, but this is the average prison sentence of men who kill their female partners is 2 to 6 years. Women who kill their partners are sentenced on an average to 15 years, despite the fact that most women who kill their partners do so to protect themselves from violence initiated by their partners.
Wow.
Yeah.
See, a
Wow.
lot of women don't speak out because they feel like, for one, they won't be believed. For another, there's very little proof, especially if it's a mental manipulation type thing. Because for one, the abuser is very good. He can pretty much sell ice to Eskimos would be an understatement. That's just how good they are. They can, you know, and so a lot of women don't come out. And when they don't come out, the rage within them builds up. When I started to have thoughts that I wanted my husband dead, I realized, okay, something's not right with me. And I can't do that because it's my kid's dad. But that is really the thought. When that thought happened, that thought gave me the fuel that I needed to push myself to get out of there, no matter what I had to face on the other side of it. And granted, we had to live in a garage, as I mentioned the other day after that. But I'm telling you, I adored that garage so much, you know, better than
safe space. Yeah.
Yes, yes. And a lot of women, they don't know that. They don't know that being away from it is so much more of a freedom that you've been missing out on. And when you do get out of it, you realize exactly how bad it was.
How old were your children at that time, Suzanne?
When we left, I went to prison. When I went to prison, they were 2 and 3 years old, and then I had this. I had what I thought was a sign from God to go back to him as long as we got counseling. He had agreed to do that, and also too, he was on probation. So I kind of had that security blanket. He was on probation for about 3 years, and he was a totally different person. Again, this man led me to the Lord. But after those 3 years of him being on probation, he went back to his addiction. He went back to his old ways. And of course, that was a slow process. So when I finally left him to be in the garage, my kids were 7 and 6, I believe. If not, they were 7 and 8. But it was about 2 years that they got to see it. And another thing too is that I remember my dad abusing my mom physically. But as soon as my mom met someone else, she took us away from the state. So I went a period of time without being around my dad, and I had mixed feelings about that growing up. I kind of blamed my mom more so than my dad. So I didn't want my children to have that question. I wanted them to know the type of person, I wanted them to know that I had tried everything to make it with their dad, and I wanted them to see for themselves that life isn't supposed to be this way, and they realize that. Now, had he come against my kids in some way, I'm probably, and it did get to a point where he would get in my son's face and scream at him, and that I called the cops after that. But yeah, so that they were young, and we do talk about it all the time. I've brought them to counseling, but they also have that mindset that they don't want to be around him. They definitely don't want mama with him. And that was something that I didn't have growing up. So
did counseling help you, Suzanne?
Me personally, yeah. Yeah, it did. It gave me a free space to speak. Really, my alone time, my healing came from the Lord, but giving me the power and the confidence I needed to tell my story and to know, because really throughout life, I was never believed. Anytime I said something, no one really believed me. But I knew that when I went to my counselor, she believed me. And she actually went to me. She came with me to court and everything whenever I had my trial for the sentencing. And that showed me a lot. It even had me to the point where I realized, that's what I want to do. I want to help other women. If I had to go through it, I'm not going to let it go to waste. I want to help other women come through it so that they don't have to go to the extent of realizing in prison or some other form of rock bottom. I don't want them to have to get to that point to realize that they need to get out.
I'm just going to say a lot of men do not like going to counseling because they right. Well, I'm just saying the people I know, let me just say that. Right. People that I know of men do not like going to counseling because that's like admitting that they're wrong. But I think right. counseling helps a lot because I speak to a counselor every month and it helps. It helps to have somebody to talk to, right. and who not sitting in a place of judgment. So right. I think counseling is if you need help, you should go get help. Yes. Like domestic violence is nothing to play. My brother right now, he is in prison for that, for hitting on a woman. He's in prison right now. And the thing that gets me is the men who hit on women, they have mothers or sisters. And if they don't have sisters, they have a mother. So I don't get it how they take and do the things that they do. But if you are out hitting a woman and doing domestic violence, I feel you should get you some help. Yeah. Go talk to somebody. you know. So Susan, I just love your point of view, because if you don't, like my son, my oldest son, he's very aggressive because of things that he have seen, you know.
Right.
So and I hold myself sometimes responsible for that, because
You do
I
that.
allowed it for so long, you know.
Right.
And so getting the help and talking to a counselor, she's like a breath of fresh air to me. So
Yes.
I think that counseling is very good. And you know,
Yeah.
a lot of African Americans don't like speaking to counselors, because they say
Right.
what you say, Suzanne. We feel that
Mm.
God, you know, we talk to God and that's it.
Right.
But God put
Right.
us here together, and He said
To help
share each
each other.
other's burdens, right?
Right.
So people
Right.
go to school so that they can help us. Get some help. Get the help
Right.
that you need, you know? So
Right.
yeah. Go
I,
ahead.
I
I want
agree.
to add to that too, Marie. I'm 100% on the counseling, absolutely. But I also always tell victims, and I feel deep in my heart too, that if you really need, if you're really going through, especially those initial stages, make sure that you're connecting with a domestic violence advocate also. And I
Okay.
say
Yeah.
that because advocates are your specialization people in
Yeah.
the field, okay? And normally, for most parts, an advocate is a person that has gone through it. So they
Right.
know exactly what you're
Yeah.
feeling. Where, that counselor, that therapist, if they haven't been through it, they're doing everything they can. But we know
Right.
when you've
Right.
experienced something yourself, it puts it a different light on it. And so
Yeah.
that's why your advocates with your centers and your domestic violence centers are nonprofits. There's no cost for it. Take
Right.
advantage of it. They're there for you, and they're the ones that can help you find safe housing if you need it. The advocates can play such a crucial role when you're in the situation.
Right.
I agree.
So Miss Barbara, is there a lot of like the ladies that we met at with the women event that we had? Is it a lot of safe places or safe houses for women who are being abused here? Do you know of?
I just came back here a year ago, and there are some new organizations, and I'm still trying to get familiar with some of them. Safe Shelter is our main one. And
Mm-hmm.
Cheryl Branch is the director over there, and I had a conversation with her actually before our event, Marie.
Mm-hmm.
And, they've got, if I remember right, she said 48 beds over there. It sounded like they have some really amazing programs for the women, and they take the children too, of course, you know,
Mm-hmm.
for when they're there, but also for when they're transitioning out. They help them get
Okay.
an apartment. They help with the job. They, continue case management for quite a long time afterwards. So, they're really there. So that's a really good resource. Now, what I'm trying to find out from her, and I had tried to connect with her here about a week ago, and we didn't connect, and I haven't gotten back to her. But what I'm trying to find out is if they're full, do they have other safe housing somewhere else in the
Right.
community, which is
Mm-hmm.
always secret. I used to back in Minnesota when I was an advocate with the program. I used to do safe housing with victims, and the sheriff would go with us out to get the victim and take her to an unknown location, one of the hotels or something,
Mm-hmm.
and I would think that maybe that's here, but I'm not sure. That's what I'm trying to find out. So,
Okay.
that's definitely options. I would think that, if Safe Shelter is full, they're going to help you get somewhere else safe.
So do you think, Miss Barbara, if the men get the counseling that they need, the domestic violence wouldn't happen and they won't end up going to prison? Do you think so?
Um, that's a really loaded question. Okay.
Okay.
For some, yes. For some, maybe no. I mean, it depends on so many things. Let's look psychologically. How are they raised? How do they handle themselves now? Do they have those coping skills? What led them to them needing this power and control? There's a whole lot of psychological stuff involved there. You know,
Right.
Yeah.
there's there's better programs out there right now, and I haven't done any current research on them to find out how effective they really are.
Right.
But You know, that's what they're in place for.
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes, though, those programs are court ordered, just like anger management programs. A lot of times when you've got court ordered programs, they aren't real effective because the person's simply doing it because they have to and check it off their list, right?
Right,
You
right.
know? So it just really depends, you know, and does that abuser want to change? Maybe they're good with who they are,
Wow.
you know?
But you know what,
I
Suzanne,
know
you said.
Go
Go
ahead.
ahead, Suzanne.
Well, men, you know, society today, they don't allow men the option to cry, you know, but it's acceptable if they're angry. And that
Right.
stigma right there is crucial towards men, for one, admitting that there's a problem because it's a normal thing. I'm sure their dad showed it at some level, you know, but anger
Yeah.
really is the only allowable emotion that they can show, which is
Right.
sad. And if, you know, so how do you change that?
Right.
It's hard.
Yes. And Suzanne, you said a key thing when I kept going in and out. I heard bits and pieces of it. How drugs and alcohol play a big part of a man being abusive. Not making no excuse for it, but
Right.
it plays a big part. So I feel like, again, like you said, Miss Barbara, counseling. First of all, we need to reach out to see the resources that we have for them to get the counseling that they need, and it'll really be a plus for them if they want to go to counseling. I think that that'd be a more effort of them changing if they want to do it. So I just think that men, if you're listening, get the help that you need because you know who you
Before it's
are.
too late.
Yeah,
Right.
before it's too late.
Yeah,
Because
because it will get caught. Right.
What did you say?
You don't want prison to be the thing that straightens you up. You know what you're
Exactly.
doing. Don't, you know.
Right.
Yeah.
Before it's too late. Because
Yeah.
oops,
But
what's gonna make you bad?
right,
Yeah.
right.
And
a
you
lot
know
of
what?
times there's a reason for what behind what they're doing. There's a root to that behavior, and a lot
Right.
of people are scared to admit that they're a bad person, or they don't even know that root has been so buried deep underneath that anger that they don't even know what the cause of that is. So
Right.
treatment. You know, and I never wanted prison for my kid's dad. I wanted him to get true reform. I wanted
Right.
his dad started using drugs with him at the age of 13 and also beat their mother.
Wow.
So I always had a soft spot for that because I did understand. And with me, I was raised watching it, you know, so and usually hurt people hurt others. And so if we could
Right.
address that hurt before they hurt others, I think that would do a lot of good if people are willing to seek the help and admit it.
And we have to, like I said, you know, earlier too, especially we as survivors. And I said this to you the other day, Marie, when we were talking about this, you know, and I said, you know, I feel like as us as survivors of this, it is our role to step out there and educate if we're up to it. Now, sometimes in your journey, you aren't there yet, and that's perfectly fine. But if you're up to it, yes, it's our role, and especially with our youth. Once again, I go back to our youth. We have to teach them what healthy relationships are. We have to teach them the warning signs. And when I say teach them, I'm talking the males too. They have to know the healthy relationships, you know? It's just so important that we keep working with them too.
Finish taking the show over. My computer is thing. Bam. Just take it over.
Okay.
So I've got, if you want to hear too, I've got some stats that are specifically for Georgia, which are scary, disturbing. Okay. All right. So let's see. As of December 31st, 2019, Georgia had submitted one misdemeanor domestic violence and no active protective order records to the NICS index. The NICS index is the information that is gathered from the state, the local, the tribal, and the federal agencies of people that should not have firearms.
Wow.
And there was no active protective orders listed in there from Georgia.
Wow.
That is extremely disturbing to me. Okay.
It really is.
Yes.
And yet I, who didn't have a violent crime, I can't get a handgun, you know?
Right. Yeah.
So that's extreme.
Yep. In 2017, there were 149 domestic violence related fatalities. 70% of those involved firearms.
Wow.
Okay. 2017, Georgia was the 10th highest rate in the U.S. of women murdered by men.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. On a typical day, this is in general, this isn't just Georgia now. On a typical day,
Right.
local domestic violence hotlines receive approximately 19,159 calls, which is an average of approximately 13 calls every minute.
Wow.
Abusers' access to firearms increases the risk of intimate partner femicide at least 5-fold. When firearms have been used in the most severe abuse incident, the risk increases 41-fold. So I'm not going to go into gun laws, but I just want you to keep that into perspective, okay?
Right.
65% of all murder-suicides involve an intimate partner. 96% of the victims of those crimes are female.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's,
that's
you know, and that's,
truth.
yeah.
That's hard-hitting truth right there. And something's got to be done. Barbara, what can, because see, I was in a situation where he controlled my money. He controlled my car. I wasn't allowed to sleep with clothes on because he feared that if I wouldn't leave, and he knew that if I made noise getting my clothes, it would wake him up. So, you know, in a situation like that, what can a female do to get out of there other than calling? Because a lot of times I know it's difficult. I've called the safe shelters, maybe not that one specifically, but, you know, the same kind of thing. And even looking online, I do love it when you go online and look stuff up, they'll have a quick exit button. Because if your abuser walks in, but like I wasn't allowed a phone, I didn't have internet, and then I had to be around him basically all the time. So in some situations, it's definitely more difficult to get out of than others. But are there more ways for women to contact and get in touch with? I kind of wish we could send messenger pigeons, you know, if we could train because really that's the only surefire way to help women.
I think that's when you have to get really creative, where it might even be when you go to the grocery store, you slip somebody, the cashier, a note of paper and say, hey, I need you to, you know, whatever. Right. The National Domestic Hotline, the National Center for Domestic Violence has a hotline. There's a crisis line. Safe Shelter here has a crisis line too, but for anybody that's out of this area, okay?
Right.
You know, that situation is hard. It really is. And that's when you need to somehow be able to connect with an advocate. You also need to set up stuff with, like, you might set up with a neighbor, you know, if possible, set up with a neighbor that, hey, okay, I normally don't have my outside house light on, the yard light.
Right.
If all of a sudden you see my yard light is on, you need to call 911.
Wow, that's good. Yeah.
Okay, you know, so there's stuff like that you can set up if you can find the opportunity to do it.
Okay, ladies, the time is winding down. And I so appreciate you, Miss Barbara and Miss Suzanne, for coming on talking about domestic violence, how it is a pipeline to prison, and trying to offer the different resources for the women to have a way to get safe, to be safe. So what I would like for you to do, Miss Barbara, and just we in 55 minutes. So what I like for you to do is, what was your last remarks? What would you like to say?
I'd just like to say, like I said, the education piece is so important. Connecting with the right people is just crucial when you're being victimized. So, take advantage of those national hotlines if that's what you need to. Get connected with that advocate, because that's your key right there. They can help you with the safe housing. They can help you with the escape plan. They can help you with all that stuff, definitely. I'm not myself doing any of the safe housing. I don't have a crisis line, but I can certainly help you, educate you on, connect you with resources, stuff like that. Again, my business is Transformations Consulting and Support LLC. You can Google that, find it on Facebook, and you can follow along on there and stuff I'm doing too. And I'm going to be setting up some virtual classes and support groups, if that's needed. So, stay safe out there.
Okay, yeah. Suzanne, time is winding down. It's 56 minutes. Tell us, do you have any last remarks?
I would just like to encourage anyone to either you're the abused or the abuser. Make that decision today to want better and to be better, because there is always room for improvement. If you look around your house, I'm sure there's some kind of area that needs attention, and you would do everything you could to fix it because you're going to need that area of your house. Well, how much more valuable is your state of mind and your being? Decide to make a better choice for living today. Get out there, make that change, and so that you can help others. Leave no one behind, and use your story to help others. There's a reason. If you had to go through it, the only way to bring good out of it is to use it to help others. So I would encourage you to do that. Don't be afraid. It actually brings healing the more you tell it.
Yep. Well, on behalf of Marie, myself, Julius Campbell, Julius Hall, AB, we thank you for watching Incarceration to Incorporate. Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Thank you.
Good night.
Thank you.
like this.